Cinema and television always seems to follow very set trends. We're still on the tail end of renewed love for dystopia and zombies, with movies and shows like Dawn of the Dead, The Walking Dead, World War Z, Zombieland, Train to Busan, The Hunger Games, Divergent, Maze Runner, 28 Days Later, Shaun of the Dead. The list obviously goes on and on. More recently, the trend has been superheroes. I'm sure I don't need to give you any examples here, but superheroes are selling movies and shows at record levels we've never seen before, with no sign of slowing. Today though, I want to talk about why I think the next few years are going to be the best time ever to be a fantasy fan. What's shakin'? My name's Cam, welcome back to another video. I make weekly videos on fantasy and horror books. I do deep dives, reviews, discussions, video essays, so if that's your kind of thing, I would love it if you stuck around. Now more than ever, I really do think it is a very exciting time to be a fantasy fan, especially if you do read a lot within the fantasy genre. I think it's fair to say that we haven't seen this much hype and love for fantasy franchises since Lord of the Rings or Star Wars were at their peak. Now, I've made videos talking exclusively about what I love about the Lord of the Rings movies and some of my deeper thoughts on those, but those movies did come out like 20 years ago now, and fantasy adaptations since then have been pretty scarce or not great. Over the last few years though, we've been seeing a really exciting and renewed interest in bringing our favourite fantasy books to the screen. It could be argued that the enormous success of Game of Thrones is to thank for this. Say what you want about the final season, and trust me, I know, but it very quickly became the most watched show in the entire world. It's easy now to forget that when Game of Thrones was airing, it was talked about by everyone constantly. It was a pop culture phenomenon that swept the planet like nothing we had ever seen before, crossing over pretty much all mediums. I remember the week that The Red Wedding aired, literally everyone was talking about it. If you went online, you would see people discussing it. People that spent all day on their phones were suddenly avoiding social media like the plague, just to avoid the spoilers until they could get home and watch the episode for themselves. It only makes sense that with Game of Thrones' success and subsequent downfall, studios would be trying to replicate that formula. Gritty adult fantasy in a surprisingly realistic world that hinges on political intrigue and unpredictability. What we're seeing now is frantic moves by studios to get their hands on all of the popular fantasy IPs that they can, and more interestingly, they're starting to realize the value in structuring these epic fantasies as a TV show rather than a movie. See, not too long ago, pouring $10 million into each episode of a show was a completely baffling idea. But Game of Thrones, and with it the rise of streaming services, have proved that it works, and it doesn't just work, it is enormously profitable, if it's done well. The people had spoken and they wanted more ambitious, character-focused fantasy. Preferably that they could watch from the comfort of their own Dorito-stained couch. We fantasy fans have so much to look forward to over the next few years, to the point where it's actually almost overwhelming. Even better, we don't have to wait too long until we start getting those things. I'm sure you already know by now that in just a couple of weeks, The Wheel of Time is going to start airing on Amazon Prime. The Wheel of Time is one of the largest and most popular fantasy series in existence, written by the late great Robert Jordan and then Brandon Sanderson. More on him in a moment. The Wheel of Time is an epic quest story spread over 20 different books and totaling more than 4 million words. To put it in perspective, that would be like if the Harry Potter series was about 50 books long. The amount of anticipation and excitement for this show have been incredible. Even people outside of the fantasy book community are clamoring to talk about it. And not too long after this show starts, we also get to enjoy season 2 of The Witcher. That one comes out on December 17th. The Witcher premiered in December 2019 and immediately started breaking Netflix records. Fans of the books and the immensely popular video game alike were binging the show not just once, but multiple times. You could say that they were doing that because of the confusing timeline, but still. Personally, I thought season 1 of The Witcher was phenomenal. I'd go so far as to say it's one of my favourite shows, full stop. I am so insanely stoked for for Season 2, especially with the new trailer that just came out a couple of days ago, and I feel like a lot of the success is owed to The Witcher doing something that we haven't really seen much of, at least recently, when it comes to fantasy. It broke a larger, high-stakes fantasy plot into episodic stories that perfectly captured the feeling of Geralt's monster-killing contracts, or to reference the game, side quests. That's what made the show so enjoyable for me, seeing a Monster of the Week style show in an immense and complicated fantasy world. The movie Dune also came out recently as well, arguably more sci-fi than fantasy, but still a great omen for book fans all the same. Dune has been received pretty well so far and has been praised by a lot of people as possibly being the next major fantasy movie franchise. The more of this success that the studios see, the more encouraged they will be to take our favourite stories and bring them to life. A new spin-off of Game of Thrones is actually on the way as well, titled House of the Dragon, and it follows possibly one of the most troublesome families in all of television, House Targaryen. It's pretty shocking how few people are talking about this one. I didn't even know they'd even released a trailer until almost a week afterwards. You have to keep in mind, Game of Thrones was the biggest show in the world. I think this just goes to show how easily a legacy can be skid-marked by terrible writing. Personally, I love Matt Smith and the world of A Song of Ice and Fire, so I'm still pretty excited. Here are some other upcoming fantasy adaptations that I think you should be excited for, and there is a lot of them. Like I said, it is a great time to be a fantasy fan, possibly the best time. Children of Blood and Bone on Disney+, Neil Gaiman's The Sandman, the Broken Earth trilogy. Lin-Manuel Miranda has talked about adapting the Kingkiller Chronicles, but the one I'm most excited for is the Lord of the Rings TV show, which, like Wheel of Time, is being adapted by Amazon. As much as I dislike Amazon as a company, it does give me hope that they can, and they have the resources to, put a considerable budget into these shows. When it comes to the Lord of the Rings TV show, I'm just excited for Middle-earth to be explored in new ways. In all of the games and media we get for Lord of the Rings, it seems to center around the War of the Ring, which I get it, it makes sense, but there is so much more equally interesting lore that they can dig into. Thousands of years of Middle-earth stories that they can explore and put on the screen, and personally, that's where I'm hoping they go with it. Brandon Sanderson has also alluded to a possible adaptation of one of his works, which is super exciting. If I had to guess, I'd probably say that it'll be Mistborn, after one of the characters was added the fortnight. The next few years are going to be pretty wild, and I'm sure not all of it will be great, but seeing these incredible stories go from the page to the screen in any capacity, and seeing people realize, especially the studios realize, just how amazing these things can be, will be worth it in spades. Another plus with all of these adaptations is that it's also creating a whole new community of fantasy fans, and in turn, fantasy book fans. Unfortunately, the fantasy community can be pretty toxic and gatekeepy at times. You know it's true, but I personally think that it is absolutely fantastic that people can see a character in Fortnite and then want to learn more about them and end up discovering an incredible series of books to fall in love with. It doesn't matter if you were a fantasy fan first or what people's reasons are for becoming a fantasy fan. Everyone should be welcome, and as far as I can see, it is a win-win. The more fans there are, the more demand there will be for fantasy adaptations. That's all I really had to say, but I would love to know what you think about the sudden rise in fantasy's popularity in popular media. I've said it a few times now, but we really do have so much to look forward to, and so many new ways to enjoy the stories that we love. But thank you for watching, especially for watching through the whole video. I really do appreciate it. You should stick around for plenty more fantasy videos as well. Thanks again, and I hope to see you in the next video. Catcha.